Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Porteous, and joining me today, if you screw up his bagel order, you'll know why they call him Vengeance. Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
You can't be Vengeance, I'm Vengeance.
And he's still better looking than the Penguin, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and these Batman movies just keep getting funnier.
Yeah, it's a laugh a riot over here at the HMP headquarters because we are headed back to the theater this week to talk about the Batman from director Matt Reeves. And a couple people went out to the movie theaters this weekend. I think they said it made like $120+ million for the opening week. Not too shabby.
More than I made this weekend.
I thought I read 128.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So those are all will be official in a couple of days and stuff. But I think DC's still doing it. But we'll see if if it's worth all of this hype and everything. But before we do that, we do want to say a big thank you to everyone who helped support the show over at patreon.com/HMP. Doesn't matter what level you support the show at, pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone, all of those fancy things are going to be coming right your way. And of course, every single month you get to vote on a movie that we watch. So, help the show and keep us going every week, and we appreciate all of you that do that as well. And as always, if you can't support the show monetarily, at least share it with a friend, tweet us out, do all those kinds of fun things, or give us a 5-star review over on iTunes, aka a humdinger.
Humdinger.
And we love to see those and really appreciate it. Anybody who helps spread the word on the show. We've kind of grown over these last couple of years and everything, and it's all because of you guys, and we really appreciate all that.
Mostly emotionally.
Yeah, the emotional support's been really the best because
we've grown emotionally.
Oh well, some of us have. The others of us is just kind of I'm a little stagnant, but that's okay. That's all right. That's what we're here for.
Oh.
Let's get into it because I think we're going to have so much to talk about today. It is going to be absolutely ridiculous. Here is the trailer for The Batman.
Fear is a tool. But when that light hits the sky, it's not just a call. It's a warning. I've been trying to reach you. Find the gun! This is about a king. And Ritter's the match.
I can take care of myself.
If this continues, it won't be long before you've nothing left.
I don't care what happens to me.
It's only gonna get worse for you.
Whoa, take it easy, sweetheart. Hear everything they say, ain't you?
Maybe we're not so different. Who are you under there?
I'm Vengeance. What's black and blue and dead all over? You. Dear God.
I got you! I got you!
Alrighty, that was the trailer for The Batman, which is out in theaters right now. You know what time it is.
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
Oh, so many avenues with which to choose. Bruce, what do you got?
Batman. He's often called the Dark Knight or the Cape Crusader, or even one half of the dynamic duo. But he has another moniker, one that gets forgotten lately. But he has been referred to as the world's greatest detective. Now, people like Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot may take exception to that, but they're in Europe, so they don't count over here in America.
Amen.
So he is the world's greatest detective. And it was, after all, Detective Comics in which Batman debuted. And it also happens to be that Detective Comics is the namesake of DC Comics, making it kind of like saying Detective Comics comics. But it seems like so many of his stories revolve around his tenacity and his punching and even his wonderful toys. But fans of the detective side of Batman often consider The Long Halloween to be the best example of Bruce Wayne's powers of deduction. In this story, he tries to crack the case of a mysterious Gotham City serial killer known only as Holiday. The killer's modus operandi is to murder people once a month on whatever the closest thing is to a holiday in that month. Of course, as the name suggests, things come to a head at the end of October. In The Long Halloween, the major criminal forces at play are the bosses Maroni and Falcone, with the colorful characters who would later become Batman's rogues gallery surviving as lower-level thugs in service of the bosses. It has a nice twist ending that I won't spoil, and it suggests that in his first couple of years, Batman was fallible. The story also features the rise of Jim Gordon from police captain to police commissioner, and we learn of a time that Thomas Wayne saved Falcone's life when the criminal boss was shot and didn't go to the hospital. Hillary Goldstein of IGN Comics ranked The Long Halloween number 4 on a list of the 25 best Batman graphic novels and described the story as, quote, tight, engrossing, and intelligent writing that never betrays the characters, and says that it mixes Batman and Bruce Wayne's lives as well as anyone has, and it brilliantly demonstrates the bond of brotherhood shared by Batman, Jim Gordon, and the district attorney, Harvey Dent. It's no mystery that The Long Halloween heavily influenced Matt Reeves' take on Batman, but the real question is, where was Two-Face? Was he hidden in Arkham pulling strings the whole time? And speaking of pulling strings from an insane asylum, Adam, do you have a list?
I do indeed. If that comic connection was enough for you, let me sell everybody on this latest gritty Dark Knight reboot, because this movie has everything. Ave Maria, 2 pairs of creepy binoculars, leather masks, something in the way, brooding, a Nighthawks reference, Sparkle Batman, Zoe Kravitz, who can finally say she's past dear old dad in the acting department. But what about guitars, Zoe? You shred? I'm just curious, that's all. Colin Farrell, who has somehow become the impossible offspring of Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. John Turturro in a role where Carr isn't peeing on him. That's always nice. We got Gollum, an amazing Michael Giacchino score that's a lot more involved than some might think. I'll have a Film Find episode about that in the future. Duct tape rats, thumb chopping, face smashing, arm breaking, skull crushing, glass smashing, bomb blowing, building scaling, gargoyle topping, squirrel suit flying, Commissioner Gordon punching, special appearance of a car at a funeral, actual detective work in a Batman movie, riddles your mom could solve, and one of the best car chases ever put to screen. This movie has everything, boys.
Oh, it does.
So
It's a big one. It's a big one.
yeah, 3 hours long, this sucker. Did it feel like 3 hours to you guys?
Yes, it did to me.
Yes. Yes, it did. And it doesn't help that it has 4 endings, which I'm not ever a fan of. I like it. I like this movie a lot. There's a lot to recommend it, but boy, it is long, and and part of it is because basically Matt Reeves said to himself, what if David Fincher directed a Batman movie?
Yeah.
Because that's what this movie is, basically. You know, I mean, it feels like a Fincher movie way more than it feels like a Matt Reeves movie. And it would go to show you that that's why the Riddler feels so much like the Zodiac Killer, is because it's basically
connection.
It's basically what it is. I mean, that is what the Riddler is in this movie, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because they definitely needed to do a bit of a revamp on that character movie wise. That doesn't deal with him like getting juiced up and like crazy, you know.
Wearing a spandex suit.
You didn't want the Jim Carrey, Frank Gorshin version?
I love that version. I love both versions. You know, I know that Jim Carrey gets besmirched for him as the Riddler in that movie, but he's great in that movie for doing what he's doing. He's doing the perfect job. How can you hate Frank Gorshin?
It's what the 90s called for. And by the way, just wanted to preface this because I'm sure we'll get a lot of new listeners in with all the big new comic releases that come out and stuff like that. We tend to get a lot of new listeners. There'll be spoilers throughout this entire podcast. So just so you know, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch the movie, come back. We'll have tons of spoilers here, just so you know you've been warned.
And, you know, the biggest thing for me is the acting. The acting in this movie is just the best. Every performance is great. There's not a single moment where I was like, ooh, they're way out of their league. You know,
Yeah.
it really felt right.
I'm with you. I'm with you on the acting. I love the casting. I thought it was kind of interesting. You know, but we'll get into Paul Dano's performance, I'm sure, a whole lot more as we go along. As you already kind of hinted at, Colin Farrell was unrecognizable. I thought Pattinson did just fine. There were a few issues I had with the character, but they weren't Pattinson's fault. They'd probably go more on the lap of Reeves or people on his crew. But I know that the last time I checked Rotten Tomatoes, this had a hugely positive audience score. I don't know if it's come down as more people have seen it, but I was kind of surprised this would have a high audience score. Not because it's not good. A lot of good movies don't have big audience scores, but Batman is a movie that like 11 and 12-year-olds are going to go to no matter, you know, what the trailers look like.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to see it, I saw a lot of bored kids in there.
Yeah.
And I got a couple of bored parents. Like, this is one that if you weren't going to see a certain type of movie, this was not going to appeal to you. So I was kind of surprised at the high audience scores I was seeing like Friday morning.
As of this recording, Rotten Tomatoes critical response certified fresh at 85%, audience score with over 10,000 verified rankings, 90%.
That shocks me because this, like I said, it's not got much to do with how, like, for example, you can get a really high audience score with something like Transformers, and then you can get a really low audience score with, I don't know, really low audience score with a good movie, not Transformers. So I'm just kind of surprised that this is at 90%. Like, it does not seem like a movie that's going to have that universal popcorn appeal to it.
Yeah,
I disagree. And the reason why I disagree is there's the three moments that every Batman movie needs to have. And this movie has all three of those things.
It's been an hour on each.
Well, the first one is introduction to Batman. That is a very successful moment in this movie where you see the criminals all looking into the shadows to see if Batman is actually there. And when he finally does show up, it is a very rewarding payoff. And so, you know, you get your great Batman introduction moment, and he's just terrific in that scene where he clearly has injected himself with adrenaline before he goes to beat the crap out of that guy. Like that absolutely is what happened there, because you see him do it only one other time, and it's when he's just injected himself with adrenaline.
Yep.
The second time is the car, and the introduction to the new Batmobile is as big an introduction as the Batman introduction.
It does get a little fast and furious at times there, and I mean that in the positive way.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, it's
Yes.
like I told people, because I watched this like a day early, and I was telling people, like, you're not going to believe this, but you're going to be scared of the Batmobile.
I leaned over to my kid, who's the Fast and Furious fan. I said, "Yep, that's Dominic Wayne there."
Yeah. And I think that is a very successful moment in this movie, introduction to the new Batmobile. And the third thing is you have to have the standoff with the villain. And they do that well as well. You know, having Paul Dano in that room and having him play a completely different type of character than what we have seen, not only as the Riddler, but up against Batman. You know, you have all of these massive performances, whether it's Bane or Jim Carrey's Riddler, even, where it's, you know, everyone is trying to be the biggest person they can possibly be, even the Heath Ledger Joker.
Yeah.
But he is far creepier as someone who's just like smiling almost constantly because he's getting everything that he wants.
And the weird thing too, I love the design. Like, once, you know, he's in jail and everything, he's got the oranges on and whatnot, and his neck thing is so big that his head could just pop right out through it. It's just it just shows you, it's just like they're not even really, they're like, he's not even a physical threat to where we can just put this on him. We know he's not going to do anything.
And so when you have all three of those things, you're going to have certain people who, like the people who, when they first saw Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, their big complaint was there's no Spider-Man for the first hour of the movie.
Yeah.
He's delivering pizza and then you don't see him for an hour. And so you're going to have those people with this movie, of course. You know, the person that I went with was not a fan of this movie at all. She found it incredibly boring. And
same here with the person I went with.
Right. And so we came to the decision that next time, maybe I see the next one by myself.
This Doctor Strange crap's going to be just like this, isn't it?
Well, she actually loves Doctor Strange. She totally wants to see that movie. So you're going to have those detractors, of course. I am not one of them. I very much enjoy this movie. I just found it, like I said at the top, I found it very long. And there is something about superhero movies in general where we have to start cutting down on the runtime of these movies because it is getting ridiculous.
Yes. That's the biggest point I wanted to talk about with this when we get to talking about the nuts and bolts.
You know, I think that something after the Infinity War stuff, like, yes, those have to be 3 hours because you have 857 characters that you need to touch on. This is a dude trying to solve riddles, and that's your movie. Why is this sucker 3 hours long?
I will be honest. Watching this, I was like, this would actually be a really good series. If you had, like, you know, an 8-part 1 hour episodes a la Disney Plus kind of thing with this. And, like, you know, this season is the Riddler or whatever. Like, I think that would really work because, to me, yes, it is long. I think that you could probably chop bare minimum 15 to 20 minutes out of this, and it's really not going to have a problem. That's why I think Matt had a full director's cut on this because I think any studio would have chopped some little bit of meat out of this.
I was going to ask you guys, like, is what made this movie work some of the lingering? Because while I'm sitting there watching it, I'm thinking that this could have handled a pretty darn good cut. And I was curious if you guys are maybe more discriminating movie viewers and you say it would have just totally undermined the whole film to cut it down. But it sounds like you're with me on this one, Sean. You could have cut some of this and you wouldn't have lost anything.
Well, I think one of the storylines, you know me, man, I love a linger. I really do.
Yeah.
But, you know, you need to cut one of the storylines. It's something that you don't really need, you know.
I'll say it. Ultimately, you could and replace it with something else, but you could get rid of the whole Catwoman thing. Catwoman doesn't need to be in this.
But
no, you can't these days. Catwoman's got to be in a Batman movie.
I know, and
especially
I think
in the year one universe, which is where this is living.
I understand that,
Year
but
two.
it's just like ultimately you could take her character out and like or replace it with a nondescript general character and accomplish nearly the same thing.
No, I totally disagree with you there, man. I think that because also, you know, she's the secret weapon of this movie.
And the whole implication that she's Falcone's daughter goes along in this, what's called the year one universe, are all the comics that they made after Frank Miller's Batman year one, like Batman year two and The Long Halloween. They're all set in that same era. And that's a big part of that universe. So I think what you could have potentially cut out of this is the Penguin. To me, the Penguin feels like Matt Reeves is really setting up a second movie that he's pretty confident he's going to get, but I don't know if he is. I don't know what the world thinks.
I think they're already working on it from what I'm to understand. I don't know if it's got like the official green light yet, but from what I'm to understand, they're at least, you know, kind of going if and when this is kind of what we're aiming for, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can just do what you did with the Joker. As with the Penguin here, there's way too much Falcone, Marconi, Penguin. Like there's way too much of that happening in this movie.
Yeah, I feel like too many police. Like there could have been one less murder, and the movie still would have been fine. Like, you know what I mean? In the mystery part of it, in my opinion, I just felt like something needed to move a little more quickly because by the time it did start getting the big set piece in the midpoint of the movie. When it's a 3-hour movie, that big set piece comes at an hour and a half when people are used to it at 45 minutes to an hour.
Right.
And I think by the time stuff started happening that would appeal to my family that were watching the movie with me, it had already burned their goodwill by the time it got there. Like they were already kind of tuned out. So I also think, like, just because the rule says your set piece has to be in the middle, I think that Hollywood needs to revisit that. And for longer movies, maybe you have sort of 2 set pieces, one at an hour and one at 2 hours if you're going to go 3 hours.
If there's people who haven't shut off our podcast yet because we don't, because it feels like 2 of the 3 of us are not absolutely in violent love with this movie. I do want to say there are so many amazing touches in this movie that a Batman mystery needs.
Yes, we haven't had one. We haven't had just the fact that we're finally getting the Long Halloween and of sorts. I mean, it's not a straight up remake, but we're getting detective part of Detective Comics here.
Yes.
And it's sorely been needed.
And whether it's the movie flares, like you don't see the Riddler in that room at the beginning of the movie in that opening scene until the television itself becomes brighter.
Yeah,
and then you
that's
see
nice.
And he's been there the entire time. That's an amazing moment. That is one of the moments in this movie where I was like, oh, okay. So we're basically being smarty pants film directors, which I was totally fine with.
Now I'm going to
Paul
double.
Dano, I love being cast as the Riddler. I mean, the Riddler is a character, like you had said, Sean, that is ripe for a sort of a reimagining, a new take on this character. I never dreamed this would be the new take, and I like it. He's like a little bit BTK, the bind, torture, kill serial killer. He definitely has some smatterings, like he kind of looks like a mass shooter, and having the online thing and stuff, and in a way that's kind of what he turns into, but he does have that like creepy guy serial killer vibe to him.
Here's
the best way possible.
Yeah, Paul Dano has the perfect, beautiful little face because he has that like cherubic innocence, and yet there can be a villainous anger behind it that when it rears its head, it is just massively scary, and he has that ability to switch that and just I mean, ungodly. What a career this man has had, and frankly, I don't think gets nearly enough praise as he should.
Totally
not
agree.
not from regular movie viewers, but like he is so good. Like I don't want to go so far as to say Heath Ledger level here, but it is of those kinds of performances where you're just like, he is just murdering it in this movie.
I would say he may surpass Heath Ledger's the most disturbing villain that I've seen.
Well, I think we're doing apples and oranges here because
that's true.
They're very different.
What Heath Ledger had to do was far harder than what Paul Dano has to do. It's in the script, Paul Dano. It's not in the script for Heath Ledger's Joker. I mean, he came up with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting choices that he was clearly specifically making.
Yes.
I'll give the credit then to the story here, but this story gives us the most disturbing villain that Batman's had to face. This goes dark like comics and not like movie version of dark.
Right. And it's well served. I mean, I don't know who's going to out Paul Dano with this stuff. I do have to say, I think that he is good enough in this role now that the next person who has to be the Riddler, they basically have to do what Heath Ledger did with the Joker for people to go, oh,
yeah,
wow.
You're gonna have to reinvent the wheel on the Riddler after what
I
this
think
is.
1987 Beau Bridges could have done this performance.
Beau Bridges Bridges on this.
Yeah, 1987 Beau Bridges would have been a good.
He wants it more. That's the difference. He wants
it.
It
It is the difference.
Now,
he's got that creepy face.
Cool thing about, like you said, with the Riddler and his showing up on screen for the first time, he's in darkness, and like you said, when the TV light gets bright, he is lit up and everything. Batman has the exact opposite intro where he is in the darkness the entire time and then chooses specifically walk into the light and everything like that, which is really cool. And again, the juxtaposition between his kind of crazy madman writings in his diaries and everything, and this is how we justify it, so to speak, the voiceover and everything is Batman's journals, which I love, and I've always thought that a large part of Batman is that inner dialogue that you have in books, and I feel like is missing in actual movies because normally he's talking to Alfred or somebody else. If we're getting expository crap like that, I'd rather have this VO dialogue.
In the beginning, when he's given his dialogue and his thoughts about Gotham and the danger Gotham's in, then we see him writing stuff down in his journal. Me being a Watchmen fan got such a Rorschach vibe from that I was really, really on this movie side from pretty early on because of all that. Like I really loved that Rorschach take on Batman there in the beginning.
Well, I mean, one of the things about this movie is that, one of the subtext things about this movie, because as you guys know, I'm a big fan of subtext.
Loves it. Can't stop.
Is that this entire movie is an allegory for addiction. I mean,
okay. I thought you were talking about closed captioning for a minute. I see what you're saying.
It's the whole thing is about addiction, whether it's Bruce Wayne's addiction to vengeance, whether it's actual addiction because everybody's taking those eye drops. There's even a character who's dressed as one of the anti-drug eye drop things. It's pretty amazing. And so all throughout the movie, you're like, I'm waiting for the big flip to happen. And what I noticed in that moment is that this movie ain't going to hold your hand. This movie is going to show you what you need to see, but it's not going to literally hold your hand and walk you through. Look, this is what's going, like when, the perfect example of this going backwards for a second is when Batman sees that Catwoman is wearing the same boots as the girl is in the picture, and he puts it together, two and two together, that these two are like together somehow. And it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't tell you like, oh, look, they're wearing the same boots. It is literally just conveyed through.
And then also it shows that even though it led him in the right direction, he misinterpreted the clue like later on. Yes. I love that part too. Once again, not holding your hand, but it shows you sometimes you just get lucky. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Yes.
And I think
can we circle back to the eye drops for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of movies love to do this ridiculous eye drop thing. Mm-hmm. Is it because they're trying to come up with something that feels like a hypodermic needle, but they don't want people shooting up? Because Judge Dredd did it with the eye drops. We know that Cowboy Bebop did it both in the anime and then the remake with the eye drops. And then we're seeing the eye drops here. And I'm kind of over the eye drop drug delivery system. Did they even do that in RoboCop? I don't know.
It feels authentic, as somebody who doesn't have any idea of how eyes work. It feels like an authentic thing.
Because it's the closest, kind of open thing where we can touch an organ on our body outside of skin. You know what I mean? It's just that's kind of it's a weird, weird thing with the eyeball. So and everybody's put an eye drop in their eye, so they know, what goes on there. And if you just add drugs to the equation, I think most of us can put it together and go, oh, drugs in the eyeballs, that seems scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's a weird thing to be a recurring trope.
But it feels it feels like it would absorb in your system faster if it's in the eyeball. It's with it butt chugging a beer or something.
I'd love for butt chugging to be in the next movie. They got to find the butt chug merchant.
Listen, I don't know what Batman movies you be watching, but
what is that
Barney
movie?
the Butt Chuggers on the loose.
What is that comic book called? Fallen Stars or something? That it's the one where the guy can't feel anything, and so the only way he can get drunk is by butt chugging. Anyway,
I think
it's that one,
is it
awesome.
Rising Stars? Was that
Rising Stars? It's the J. Michael Straczynski thing. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like him. It's it sounds like JMS.
Good old butt chugging JMS. I tell you.
Butt chugga.
He's gonna write a cease and desist order right now.
They call me JMS the bridge builder, JMS the house builder, but you chug one butt. All right,
you get a little bit of a reputation.
You chug one beer through your bum,
and that's who you are for the rest of your life.
So to get back to the movie, it's done by people who are very smart. They make a lot of smart decisions. They make a lot of they have a lot of smart moments. There are a few moments in this movie where it's like the ridiculousness of the situation do come up. So for me, there was two moments. One is when Bruce Wayne is in the same room with Jim Gordon and he's talking to him, and then like 20 minutes later he shows up as Batman and talking to him, and Jim Gordon, who is a very good cop, does not notice, oh, that guy seems to have the same build and the exact same speech pattern, and like everything is the same, and they're even in the same room, I believe.
Yeah, they're all over the place, and it's Jim Gordon may not necessarily be the best detective himself either. And the internet is slowed to a halt. Super. Well, shucks. Oh, hold on.
Sounds good to me.
Hold on. 2, 3. Hold on.
That's what I thought.
There we go. One more time. Test.
And that was the best point I've ever heard you make in the history of this show, Sean. I hope Adam got that.
Oh boy. never to be heard again, and it doesn't bear
Never
repeating.
going to do like the pick of destiny. We're going to do the Tenacious D ode to the greatest thing Sean ever said.
But you know what I'm trying to say here. It's because it's like, I know it's a very obvious thing. Like I understand that, but when it's made that plainly, that, you know, like, look, at least keep my suspension of disbelief. It's like when you see a shot of martial arts being done, and you know, there's one guy who's taking on 15 people. Like, you don't see the 15 people in the shot at the same time, because you're just going to see a bunch of dudes standing around.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, you have them just off camera so that when he's taking down 2 or 3 guys at the same time, you don't see the other 11 people just standing there.
The NPC shuffle.
Right. And so, you know, having that scene basically betray your level of disbelief in this thing, suspension of disbelief in this thing, it was just a bad moment where I was like, oh, you guys are so smart, why are you doing that? And then the other moment is actually from the actor himself, and I think Pattinson's amazing as the new Batman. I really, really like him a lot. But there's the moment where he's up on the scoreboard at the end of the movie, and the face and sounds he chooses to make while he's hanging on for dear life make it sound like he is in sexual congress. and it made me laugh out loud in the movie theater, because it just sounded like he was enjoying himself an awful lot.
It was probably the only laugh that evening, right?
Instead of being, well, that, the thumb drive, of course, the thumb drive joke
that did work.
The theater thought it was hilarious.
That's the thing. There was a lot of people saying like, "Oh, there's zero humor in this movie," and it's like there's not. There's at least 5 decent little laughs that are in there.
Yeah,
man. And we haven't really said anything yet about Gordon, but is Jeffrey Wright just like one of the best guys out there? I think I could watch him in anything all day long.
Yes,
and I never even knew who the guy was until Westworld, but he's been around for a while. Like, why has he not been a bigger deal sooner? At least he's a big deal now.
He's been a big deal for a long time. It's just that he wasn't in things that you saw. You know, I mean, like he's in Bisquat. There, he's in that remake of Shaft in the 90s with Samuel Jackson. He's the bad guy.
Oh,
it's him and Batman actually are the 2 bad guys in that movie. the past Batman, Christian Bale.
Val Kilmer.
Him and Christian Bale are the 2 bad guys in that Samuel L. Jackson Shaft movie. And he's great in it, and he's always been a great actor. The issue is that he really wasn't doing these gigantic movies until recently. And it's where he belongs. You know what it feels like is kind of like it's sort of like the torch is being passed to this amazing actor from man, I am losing my mind now, from the guy who played Hannibal Lecter.
Oh, Anthony Hopkins.
Yes. It's
It happened on screen in Westworld. I love it.
It's like Anthony Hopkins. It's like Anthony Hopkins went, you know what? It's okay. You can be in gigantic movies like me now. And Jeffrey Wright said, thank you. I think I will.
I want to talk about Jeffrey Wright's hairline.
Mhm.
So is this a wig or did they CGI it like Kevin Costner style?
Totally a wig. Totally a wig.
I was hoping they CGI'd it.
They're not putting dots on that dude's
I was
face.
about to say, wouldn't you love to see the behind the scenes and there's just dots on his scalp and they're like, we're CGIing this in later. He doesn't even want to sit with the piece all day because he's too big of an actor to do all that.
Would a receding hairline hurt your interpretation of Jim Gordon? Like, I would have been fine with it. Let the guy keep his natural hairline.
Oh, I think that it's probably an actor choice.
Oh, okay.
Like
it's not like we haven't seen it before there, Jeffrey. Come on, you're not fooling anybody.
Well, it's like John Saxon would come on and be like, well, what kind of hair would you like me to have in this movie? Because like he just had all different kinds of wigs and stuff, and he just goes, I'll do whatever. I don't care.
bring me one of Dante's beards. I'll just wear that on my head like they did in Clerks.
Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell is like, every year that goes by, I like this guy even more.
I love Colin Farrell. Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm all in.
He is just something else as an actor. And like there's these times where he'll go off the reservation. And even then, even in like crazy stuff like Daredevil, he's not particular, but like he is given 1,000% in that movie, even though it's bad. He's going at it.
I hate him in Daredevil. I think he's the worst part of that movie. But
he's giving it everything.
He is giving it everything, but he's doing the wrong performance for that movie. And I think that what he's doing here is basically the same thing. It's just that he is a different kind of crazy now.
Yeah.
and it shows, and it's great.
I have loved him ever since he was on Scrubs.
Just since Scrubs, though. Before that, no dice.
Yeah, before that, no dice. So once he was on Scrubs, I was like, man, this guy's got it.
He was on Scrubs?
Yeah, he was on an episode of Scrubs. Is this really like cool, handsome guy that JD didn't like, so he did something to sabotage him, and then later he's like, JD, if you didn't like me, just tell me. I would have been cool with it, and made JD feel bad. But he was really good.
Oh, gee.
All the girls had a crush on him.
Classic.
I loved him also in The Gentleman. You guys seen The Gentleman?
Oh, I love him in The Gentleman. That's
yes,
great.
I love The Gentleman, a movie I think people should talk about more.
That is a good movie.
I'm more the Minority Report phone booth kind of guy. But
he's awesome in that too. He's awesome in a lot of things.
He's so good, and like I just watched him on an episode of Hot Ones, and he's just like he's one of those down to earth people who you would imagine could be like a complete jerk. That guy, just because I don't know, he's a good looking Irishman. You figure, but no, he is just one of those like nice, humble, download. Like I love being in movies and stuff and acting. It's like listen, what I do is not a big deal or anything. It's just like. You're like, oh, you're just a regular, normal person. That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure, for the record, he hit some pretty big bumps in the road that may have humbled him.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Rough patches. Yeah.
Yeah. He was almost out of the business for a minute there.
Yeah. He fell into the embrace of illicit substances or something.
Oh, I remember that.
So
Peter Sarsgaard coming in this, had no idea he was in this movie.
Man, pitching 85 miles an hour, getting the job done.
Yes. And he was like, for me, he was like one of those guys that it's like, how do I know this guy as I'm watching him? Because I'm not like super into the filmography of Peter Sarsgaard, but he was great here as this DA or whatever.
Yeah,
he's Hector Hammond in Green Lantern.
That's where I know him from then. But
because he has that one really great moment in that movie, and it might be the only good moment in that movie, where whoever's playing Carol Ferris says something to him, and he turns around and he's got this grin on his face like he's about 5 years old, and he's supposed to be this maniacal like crazy man, and he completely betrays it in that scene. And I was like, totally worth it. Good job by you, Skarsgård.
Now, I really like Zoe in this, Zoe Kravitz, but I don't know if she's like I don't know if I thought she was a good kind of action star or is she a good actor. I don't know if I can tell.
She's a great actor.
Okay.
She's great.
I don't see that yet.
The action part, you can see the wire work stuff. So she's not great at that yet.
Because what I was getting pulled into was I just kind of liked her attitude. I kind of liked how she was presenting a very believable early career Selena Kyle. But I didn't know if I was liking her charisma or her acting. Like, I think those are kind of two different things. And so I was curious what you guys thought.
Well, it's impossible for me to look at her and not see her mom.
She looks just like her.
I mean, it's like looking at a clone.
Oh, who's her mom?
Lisa Bonet.
Oh, yeah. I used to watch her on TV. Okay. So does that mean Jason Momoa's her dad?
No, it's
I know who that is, man.
Yeah.
I'm just being a jerk.
Oh.
But he was like doing the press saying he was a proud stepdad. He was very happy for her in this movie.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
She's great in it. I buy her as Catwoman. I totally buy her as it. She does have that same thing that her mom had, though, where there's a little bit of like removal.
Listen, I'll say it. Like, I mean, and like I said, I do like her. I think she has grown as an actor, and I'm really, like I said, that was kind of a joke that she passed her dad in acting, but I think that is true. I think she's at her mom's level in acting, which is good, but was never really amazingly good. And I think you're right. To me, there's the biggest problem that I have with her performances is I'm not seeing any process or anything kind of behind the eyes with her. That's just for whatever reason.
Is that what you mean by the removal?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
because it's just not quite there. Whereas just to give you an opposite side of this thing, when Batman is staring at that kid, that's the best Batman acting we've seen in any Batman movie, and all he's doing is looking at a child. And he's got a lot of crutches here that help with the storytelling, but.
There's a lot of that with Pattinson. I've noticed that he conveys so much through his facial expression and eyes that he isn't even speaking, and what's happening.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, he kind of has a little bit of, and this is just me editorializing, but I think he kind of has a little bit driving him of what was driving Christian Bale. Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit like, I was a young heartthrob at one point, and I want to actually be an actor, because I kind of see that with him. And I haven't seen much of what Pattinson's done in the last few years, but I've heard positive things, and the choices he's making are certainly saying, like, I'm not just trying to make easy choices here. Like, I'm not making a bunch of Batman movies that are big paychecks, but he's actually really picking stuff he enjoys or stuff that he wants to try to improve his craft with. So I admire that about him.
When did you change on Pattinson, Adam? When were you like, you know what? That guy's all right. Because like everybody else, I mean, it was like, oh, it's that kid from Twilight. I don't want to see what he's in.
Yeah, obviously Twilight was the big one that everybody saw that was like, oh, we've got an idea of who this kid is and all that kind of stuff. What was the name of that? I'm trying to think of the movie. Let me see if I can find it here real fast. But it was a Good Time. Good Time was the big one. Though I did see Life. I saw Life and that was good too. But Good Time was really the one that made me go like, oh, this is different. And a lot of that, true, I'm not going to lie, is a big Safdie brothers thing. They brought a lot to that. And I think they brought out a lot of really good in him and stuff like that. So I'd say that was like the one in 2017 that made me go like, oh, no. Like, I've seen him in other things, but this was the one that was like, oh, no, he's definitely for real.
Because for me, it wasn't until The Lighthouse. I was
going to ask if you guys had seen the Lighthouse movie.
Yeah.
Once I saw him in The Lighthouse, I was like, oh, this guy's for real. Like, he's an actual honest to God actor.
Because I haven't seen the movie, but I feel like that's the one that got him a lot of respect from people that were holding out.
Mm-hmm.
It was the one. It's the Brad Pitt in 12 Monkeys thing, where Brad Pitt is seen a certain way by males in America at one point, and then he's in 12 Monkeys, and every dude in the world's like, you know what, you're all right.
Yeah, we like that guy's okay. Channing Tatum had that for a second where it was just like, we all hate that guy, and it's like, all right, fine.
It's the same
Channing
thing.
Tatum didn't win us over with his acting prowess.
Yes, he did. He totally.
He
did. Absolutely. After 21 Jump Street, man, I was all in with that dude.
It was like,
I liked him in 21 Jump Street. You're right. I'll give you that. But I think I've also seen him in other things, and I've thought, you know what? He's not that good of an actor, but I still like the guy. He seems fun. He seems nice.
And he can move. So that's all he really needs.
He is a huffer.
But yeah, Pattinson is really great. I love where he's going. And I think ultimately I see at least an idea of what I think Matt Reeves kind of wants to do with this, because this Bruce, as we've kind of talked about, is he's not unprepared, but he's not fully skilled out yet in everything. He hasn't hit the max. I love that we see, him, fail a couple of times on things. I thought that's, an important thing to do. I like the idea that he has not been a philanthropist at any point at this time. He's just kind of saving all of his money. He's become this recluse and everything, and has to kind of be pushed into like, hey, which you really think it'd be the opposite way of I'll start throwing money at the city instead of I'll start beating the snot out of everyone in the street who's bad. You think he'd start with the money, but no, he went the opposite direction. Started with the beating in the streets and then goes, maybe I should probably start, giving some of my money away. And that's really where it all comes down to in that renewal program, which, by the way, did you guys, there's a lot that goes, I saw this movie twice, and I didn't fully understand everything until the second time that I watched it. Did the story, unfold enough for you to where you understood everything going on?
Yeah, the renewal program was the root of the evil.
Yeah.
It was unregulated money that people had access to, and it was what caused a whole lot of the evil that goes on in this movie was that attempt to do good in the wrong way.
Yeah. So if you've seen this twice, Adam, because I just didn't have the time to do that because who has half a day?
Yeah, it has 6 hours. Yeah,
I spent those 3 hours and then I went straight to work until like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Let me ask this question because it's one of the ones that I was wondering about. Like, I am going to look out for this next time I see this movie. When it shows up on HBO Max in 30 days, I'm wondering do you see the Riddler in the window across the street from the club?
I did not
early on.
I did not know to possibly look for that until I watched a couple of YouTube videos where somebody had mentioned it. I had not noticed.
Oh, really? So he is there though.
I don't know. I've heard that like the diner that he's sitting in, we do see that in several other scenes in the background from what I'm to understand. I don't know if we see him in those particular scenes. I don't know.
Oh, I see. Because I'm gonna look out for that next time I watch this movie. And I think that he, knowing the way this movie has been constructed, I can almost guarantee you he's in that window. Because when I saw that at the end of the movie, I was like, "Oh man!" And he's there. We've been seeing him in that window the whole time. Like the lone gunman. But I'm wondering but absolutely, he has to be in that. You have to see him at some point.
Oh man, so we're starting to get near the end of the podcast, and there's still a couple other things I want to ask about or talk about. So I'm trying to figure out which to go next. Matt Reeves, before this movie, like what did Matt Reeves do to get the cachet to be able to do a director's cut 3-hour, ridiculously ambitious Batman movie?
Apes movies, man.
I was about to say he didn't direct a lot of bad.
Did those really like succeed on every level? I'm not being facetious. I just don't know. Were they huge at the box office?
Yeah, yes. They were actually the sequels did better than the original one did.
And that also explains Andy Serkis, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. and so he also did Let Me In 2010, and before that, the big one was Cloverfield.
Yep.
Yeah, but I just don't. I didn't watch Let Me In. I don't see any overlap between this and Cloverfield. But yeah, I could probably see that with the Apes movies. I watched them, just don't remember them that well. I remember thinking they were fine,
Oh, and the David Schwimmer classic, The Pallbearer.
Oh, that's him, really?
Yeah, he did. That was that was his first
Didn't
feature.
He make Under Siege 2 or something?
No.
The Pallbearer, that's during the time in the 90s where it's like, hey, let's make like really dark comedy like The Cable Guy.
Man, I really feel like Matt Reeves was involved in Under Siege 2. I don't know why I've got that in my head, but I really feel like that.
Maybe he wrote the script. He's a writer too.
Yeah, that might have been.
Yeah, Under Siege 2, written by Matt Reeves. There you go.
That's a good pull for a guy who didn't know he did the Apes movies.
Yeah, there you go.
Just through context clues, I guessed.
Looking at the cast here, though, what I was going to say is it feels like this movie is filled with incredible actors and Andy Serkis. So let's go see it.
Oh boy!
I thought Andy
Serkis is great. Andy Serkis is great, but he's always going to be like the mocap guy in my mind for the rest of my life.
That's a sad state of affairs for you.
And I was going to say maybe you'll turn a corner on that, like All of America turned on Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
Well, he did really impress me with his last directed feature, Venom 2, that we all, if I remember, gave it Dick Grayson.
Yeah, it was good. It's a fun time. You know who I didn't like as an actor, and maybe she'll have better stuff in the next one, was the Bella Real, that character. I thought that character was just so there's nothing to her. I wanted to like.
Well, that character was just background. I mean, that character wasn't supposed to mean a whole lot. Just the new person running for mayor.
And not for
it's
nothing.
like she represents change in the city.
And I'd be a little bit peeved if I was Bruce Wayne and rolling up to a funeral and this potential mayoral candidate's like, hey man, I need to be hitting you up about some money, and you're like, wait a minute, excuse me.
I know that's like so out of character for a politician.
But it's I know, but it's just so gross. And she's just like, "Don't you get out of here? I'm going to be talking to you about giving me more money." It's like, my God, lady.
So another thing I want to ask about before we run out of time is, how did you guys feel about Bruce Wayne's hair?
It feels very Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe to me.
It's just, I never have pictured, even young Bruce Wayne, I don't picture with the emo bangs down in his face, the mysterious anime kid. It almost felt like there's no way that was Pattinson's choice, because that almost felt like somebody's trying to remind us he was once a heartthrob or something. I
totally disagree with you.
I think so.
I think that he had a lot of input on that,
because I did not like that aspect, and I wasn't going to blame Pattinson for it. That's hair and makeup, man. That's all on them. But that was the one part that just didn't work, man. I kind of have my thoughts and feelings about Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne tries to hide his pain when he's Bruce Wayne, and he shows it.
Well, I think that it's part of a whole. I think that the fact that the hair is a little off, the fact that he is not the world's greatest detective yet, the fact that he's not a great Batman yet. He's getting there, but it's year 2. And I think that that's part of the whole cloth. I think, probably next time we see him, it's going to be high and tight.
Yeah, exactly. That's
he
my
put
whole
the
thing.
effort. He put the effort to put the product in his hair, but he didn't get his bangs out of his face. Like he needs to make up his mind.
But I think that's where it's going. That like the next Batman will take place, if I was to venture a guess, probably a couple years later. His tech and everything is always a little bit more, upgrade and everything. He's a better detective at this point, and every couple of years, skip forward a couple of years in the history and stuff, because I think especially after having Gotham getting flooded out and stuff like that, how about we cut to a couple of years later after all of that cleanup has been done, the streets have been wild, because it feels like, certainly if you look at the way that the suit is on Batman and how everything is together, very Arkham Asylum Games kind of vibe to it and everything. So there's a lot of that going on. I feel that that's certainly where we can expect things to go, is the town getting more and more crazy as things go on. And of course that's where Batman has to come in and whoop some butt.
Agreed.
But I'm excited to where things are going and have the possibility of going. And with that, let's talk about what probably I think should have been like a after credits teaser or something, but was in the movie itself. Our little our Arkham visit and everything.
Our Barry Keoghan.
Yes, it still kills me that could have been Yorick Brown instead of that effing thing they gave us.
But Barry Keoghan is an unidentified Arkham prison who Matt Reeves has come out and said yes is indeed Joker. So
okay, because I in the credits it just says unidentified Arkham inmate, and I really like the idea that maybe we're going to think it's Joker, and then we find out it's something else. Particularly given the parallels with the Long Halloween, if that had turned out to be Harvey Dent when we all thought it was the Joker, that would have been kind of cool. Would have kind of tracked well. But yeah, if it's Joker, that works too. He did definitely have more of a Joker vibe there, and a lot of prosthetics you could tell from his profile. That was not a Keegan profile.
Yeah. Now, a name that I heard threw out for Two-Face, which I thought not too shabby, John Barenthal.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea. Because he's gonna play the crazy Two-Face, crazy and great. The at issue is I don't see him as a DA who has it together. there's something about Barenthal where like
He doesn't
that
have
guy's
the A
just-
vibe. You're right, man.
I don't know. I disagree. You got to watch him in what's it, Ford v Ferrari.
I
I've
love
seen
that
that
movie.
movie.
I've seen that movie.
So he's like, I feel like you can have that kind of,
I could buy him as a mechanic. I could buy him as an engineer, but I don't buy him as a DA. You got to have that combination of law school and politics.
You're talking to middle-aged white guys here. We've seen Ford versus Ferrari, Adam.
I don't know.
3 times, and it keeps getting sexier.
But it's an interesting thought. I don't know where they're going to go, but like I said, I hope in a couple of years they'll just see what you can do. I don't know. Like I'm at the same point here that I am with like people like James Gunn and whatever it's called. Whatever you want to do at this point, Matt Reeves, I'm interested in seeing whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the way he managed to just totally take the Riddler and go in a direction I never would have guessed and make it really, really work. I wouldn't mind for him to take like Calendar Man. I like give him some of the villains that haven't been used to death already and let him make them interesting, kind of like what James Gunn is doing.
Yeah.
There's a really kind
Only
of
in a very different way. Nobody's mistaken this movie for James Gunn.
they kind of do the Calendar Man in one of the Arkham games and stuff. It's kind of freaky, a little scary if you do it right.
Calendar
I wanna
Man's a big
see-
deal in the Long Halloween.
I
Yeah.
want to see Scarface is what I want to see.
Oh, you and me both.
I just wanna
Boy,
see
have
the
I thought
puppet.
about that. Just walking around with nobody else. This is a very different Batman movie. Before we get to our Robin rating here and everything, we do have to ask ourselves one very important question: is how does this movie relate back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone?
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Hello, Mr. Stallone. It's Sweet Shawnsy again. And I got to tell you, one of my favorite things about you is your painting. But after that, when you open about modern, in theaters right now movies, like the time you said you were upset over Michael Keaton playing Batman with the Velcroed on muscles, that was some A-plus Stallone right there. And when you call Bruce Willis greedy and lazy, I have to admit you were way in front of the curve on that one. I've seen no less than 3 think pieces on that guy's precipitous drop. And if he's willing to take millions of the Russian mafia's money to appear in a movie for one day of work, who am I to badmouth him? I mean, we all take chances. One time I told a woman I was romantically involved with that she looked terrible in a pair of jeans she was wearing. I knew I was taking my life into my own hands, but instead of the stupid sitcom response of her getting mad at me, she thanked me and changed pants. See, not all heroes wear capes. And Adam, I don't want you to take this information and use it incorrectly. This doesn't mean you can walk up to a stranger in the street and tell her you think she looks fat in a pair of Jordache. Then when she gets mad at you, say, I'm just being honest. I don't see what the big deal is. When you totally know, you know what the big deal is. Also, please note, Adam, I never said she looked fat. I said she looked terrible. And we had already had a prior agreement that I was to tell her when clothes of any kind made her look terrible or weird. Okay, moving on. Mr. Stallone, this week's Stallone connection is you, actually. You've spoken about Batman in the past, and I've been seeing a story come up in my news feed this week where during an interview with Ain't It Cool News, you were told that Frank Miller, writer of the genre-changing Dark Knight Returns, and a man who treats all people everywhere fairly and equally, had said he wanted you to play Bruce Wayne in his version of Batman, the tough old guy, the Dark Knight Returns. The Batman who said to himself, you know what I need? A tank. And here's what you had to say about that role, and I'm quoting here. It sounds very intriguing. I can certainly relate to his plight, and the main concern would be, do you have fire in your gut at that age to be interesting to watch? If the flame is still burning, which I suspect it will be, since I have reflux and ulcers anyway, something will still be simmering inside. So yes, that would be quite the revelation. Now, first of all, what? And secondly, as of writing this, you are currently 76 years old. And I'm not saying that a Stallone Batman movie would be an amazing idea. I'm not. I'm saying it's a good idea. I'm not saying it's a good idea. Sorry, I screwed that up. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm not even saying you should entertain this thought, but here's the thing. I totally want you to make this movie because it would be the best movie ever made. It could be. It may be so good that Bob Kane himself might come back from the dead to take credit for one more thing he had very little to do with. But a Stallone Dark Knight Returns may also be one of the greatest swings and misses Hollywood has ever made. Whatever movie you're thinking about right now, when you're thinking of the biggest flop of all time, it could be replaced with this movie. And that's amazing. Your name and legacy won't take that big a hit. You'll always be Rocky and Rambo and John Spartan, Demolition Man fans. But you could also be the guy that everyone agrees made a far worse Batman movie than Batman and Robin and Sir. That is an impressive feat by anyone's standards. Remember how brutal everyone was towards Ron Howard's Star Wars Solo movie? But now in retrospect, with the rest of the sequels, it's actually a pretty good movie. That could be people talking about Batman and Robin when compared to your movie. It's a joke that could last generations. My kids have no idea what Ishtar is, but my kids' great-grandchildren might still be making Stallone Dark Knight jokes, and that is nothing less than magical. So there's your Stallone connection to the movie The Batman this week. It's you, Sylvester Stallone. And you know what? I'll be here again next week, connecting every single comic book movie ever made back to you, Sylvester Stallone, your pal, Sweet Shawnsy from the internet.
Well, you know, I actually was kind of the designated kid growing up who, if mom had an outfit in the morning or something like that, and if she asked my sister was, you know, she's a nice, sweet-natured child. She was just like, "Mama, you look great and everything," and she's just like, I don't ask her because she's just going to tell me it looks nice. If it looks dumb, you'll tell me, and you know, I'll change something. But if it look good, I just go like, yeah, that looks good, or like, don't do that, do this or something. I have an eye. All right, let's get into it.
Hold on, because everyone has a question now.
Okay, doke.
How close was your impression to your sister?
Honestly, not horribly bad. She's got the kind of, even though my mother was born in Albany, you wouldn't know it from listening to her. She sounds Southern as all get out, and like my sister's quite the Southern belle as well. Not.
Well, there you go.
Of course, thank God she doesn't listen to this show. All right. So, over at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you don't know what that is, why don't you head over to the subreddit, reddit.com/r/Hero Movie Podcast, right there at the top of the screen. We asked a couple of our Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/HMP what they thought of The Batman, and here are a couple of their thoughts. Justin said, "It wasn't without its flaws, but I honestly didn't believe there was a way to put a new spin on this character. Reeves told a skin-crawling version of Batman that we haven't seen before, and for that, it's a Dick Grayson for me." Robert says, "I particularly like the fact that this was a less experienced Batman. It wasn't perfect. He needed to help break ciphers and didn't stick the landing in his squirrel suit. Dick Grayson for sure." Maria says, "I really liked it, but I never really read any Batman comics, and I was fully thrown on how dark the Riddler was. I always thought the Riddler was more like a green suit Jim Carrey Riddler. Also, Batman was emo, and I loved it." Kevin says, "The Batman is closer to the movie that I thought I was going to get with the Nolan version. Definitely an improvement. The only issue that I had with it is that the female POC characters were paper thin. Dick Grayson for the attempt." Nate says, "I like Batman. I like a Batman that doesn't kill again, but being 44 years old, I don't like a Batman that was a child in 2001. Still a Dick Grayson." And Voss says, "Had they shaved 20 or 30 minutes off of it, it could have been a lot better. Overall, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Not as good as The Dark Knight, but still better than a lot of the other DC efforts as of late. Only really two options for our Patreon members is Tim Drake and Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson won out by twice as many as Tim Drake, so a decent little consensus there. Bruce, where does The Batman fall on the Robin rating system for you?
There's a lot I admire in this movie, man. I'm glad we finally got to see Batman as a detective. I really, really like this dark Riddler, but just like one of our patrons said there, it's a shade too long, man. I was yawning at times, and the family I was with were really angry at me for making them go see this on my birthday. So, you know, maybe I'll revisit it and I'll think about it a little bit differently. I just didn't have my mind blown, so I'm going to go with Tim Drake on this one.
All right. Sean?
It's a Tim Drake for me as well. But that does bring up a point there that if Batman's parents were murdered in 2001, that means that they're probably going to see Attack of the Clones at the time.
Hopefully it was before the movie and not after.
I was about to say a fate worse than death.
Was there a Zorro movie in 2001?
No, the 90s.
1999, 98, 99.
So close. That could have worked out perfectly with the Zorro.
Totally coulda.
Very cool.
For me, the movie is a Tim Drake. It's good. It's not great. It's something that I am going to revisit. I don't know if I've ever said this to you guys before, but I'm not the world's biggest Batman fan. I like him a lot, but I'm not the world's biggest Batman fan. But he is. There's been several movies where I'm like, oh yeah, yep, that's the stuff, boy. And this one is just a very good movie. But if everyone remembers, Batman Begins was not something where people were walking out of that movie theater going,
Yeah,
greatest Batman ever.
You're right, man.
So for me, it's a Tim Drake, and I liked it a lot.
I wouldn't consider myself the biggest Batman fan, but Batman and Spider-Man are always duking it out for favorite comic book character for me. So it's certainly high up there as far as my kind of, I don't want to say expectations, but my hopes. I wanted this to be good, and I finally, it feels like every iteration. Like I posted a thing on Twitter a couple days ago that I felt was very apt, where it was just kind of a taken thing from Watchmen with Dr. Manhattan sitting on Mars, just saying it's 1989. I'm watching a grittier Batman. It's 2003. I'm watching a grittier Batman. It's 2022. It's now I'm 40. I'm watching a grittier Batman, and it is the same. This is very much that same kind of thing where I feel like we have probably turned another leaf with Batman, and I think that this is going to be a very
They can't get any grittier unless they give the franchise to Eli Roth.
I'm
here.
telling you, you never really know. But I think with what we've seen from Matt Reeves, especially like I said, with those apes films, they progressed. They had, they're very story involved in everything. And I think that's where this guy really leans, is that story first kind of thing. And I think Batman has truly kind of needed that. And I feel like we've got one of the first people who's kind of seen Batman. And even though it's early, I think in the subsequent Batman films, we're going to see a bit more of a Batman that we're probably more familiar with, the one that people would go like, oh, that feels far more like Batman than what we saw in this first one. And I think that's on purpose. I think we're looking for a wave of stuff here. I think between all the people involved, I think we're in for some good Batman movies. I would certainly hope.
Yeah,
so too. That's a Dick Grayson for me. I really love this. Like I said, I watched it twice. I've lost a lot of sleep this past week watching this flipping movie and a couple of other things with work and stuff. But it's not perfect. There are flaws in it and stuff like that. But for what it does and how it does it, man, oh man, was I on board and engaged the entire time. And I followed far more of the story watching it the second time. Same thing with music. I'm going to talk more about this on the Film Find, later on this week. So check all that kind of good stuff out. That is it, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And guess what? We got a whole bunch of other episodes in the back catalog. So why don't you go check those out and be a subscriber if you're new to the show. And if you really love this show, please head on down to patreon.com/HMP. Pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone. Get to vote. And, of course, like you heard today, we can hear what your reviews on the things that we watch are. And we'll be talking about that in just a minute. Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I like people to come check out my YouTube channel. You can find all kinds of anime dad reactions, reviews, and other comments going on over there. I had a great video where I discovered which Attack on Titan character I happen to be. And, of course, there's always coverage of cool things like Death Note, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and, of course, Attack on Titan. Go check it out.
Sean, what else?
It's not about where I've been. It's about where I'm going. So the next couple of podcasts that we have coming up is 30 Questions Moon Knight. I'm guessing that we're probably doing something with Kenobi. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
30 Questions Kenobi. Check out those when they drop.
Look at him with the slang. I love it. He's hip, guys. He's hip as hell. So do all that kind of good stuff. Just look up 30 Questions on any podcast app that you have. You'll find us there. And of course, check out the Film Find, where this week I'm going to be talking about a book review between Ron Howard and Clint Howard. They wrote a book about their early Hollywood experiences with their
that's awesome.
family and everything. Really great book. So I'm going to have a review of that. And a little later in this week, I'm going to talk a bit more about Batman, go into Michael Giacchino's score a good bit, because what he's done with this score is a mashup of Batman that people have never seen before. It might take me a little bit longer to do this show because I'm going to come with some audio receipts and stuff and play you a couple different clips of what I think he's kind of doing with this score, which is kind of amazing. So check out the Film Find, everybody. That is it, everybody. Join us next week when we're talking is it Mordred? Is that how I pronounce it?
Dr. Mordred.
It is available on Tubi. I have no idea what it's about. Sean says
It's a Doctor Strange movie.
Oh, that's
that
right.
Doesn't have Doctor Strange in it because they lost the rights and they're like, we're making it anyway.
So yeah,
and it's
imagine
got Jeffrey Combs in it. It's going to be great.
Jeffrey Combs, Full Moon Productions, Charles Band, and a ripoff of Doctor Strange. At this point, what else do you need to know? You're coming back here next week for that review. That is it, everybody. Join us next week for Dr. Mordred, for Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet. Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Porteous. Stay super, everybody.
I'm Marty Needham.